Sam Amick, senior writer over at The Athletic. He is down in San Antonio. Sam, let me ask you this. Jalen Brunson leads the Knicks to the championship. Is Jalen Brunson the greatest Knick of all time?
Mr. Mannix, good to see you. Is he the greatest Knick of all time? It's maybe. I was quick side story from Playoff Road here. I was at an establishment last night with the lovely daughter of one Patrick Ewing, so Randy Ewing. So she might have something to say about this debate. There's a long list of great Knicks. I don't care, to be honest with you, where Jalen falls in that debate. I like the other debate better. Like the 6'2" and under thing is wild. Chris Paul deserves to be on that list, but Jalen is doing the type of stuff that sparks these debates, doing the type of stuff that, not to have somebody catch a stray, but I keep laughing about the Becky Hammond, like the whole commentary where Becky, said so long ago that Jalen could not be the number one guy on a championship team. And she stood on that recently, which was kind of, strange. He's just been incredible, man. He's fun to watch. And I'm West Coast based, so I don't see the Knicks as much. And buddy, to watch Jalen do what he did in the fourth quarter, it was fun. It was neat to see because it was like, oh, this dude is as advertised when it matters most.
What's been the vibe around the Spurs the last couple of days?
Fine. They're pretty, for a young group, they're pretty even keeled. They're mature. Wemby, I'm always really interested how he's going to handle his voice and his messaging. I did think it was interesting after game one that, and this, like he kind of wasted no time sliding in quite a few comments about your confidence. And, I'm not worried in the slightest, just projecting the kind of way you would expect for a confident guy. They seem fine. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head when you talked about game two is let's do a pulse check if they lose game two. They're going to be fine if they split this thing at home. And not to put you, give you a homework assignment. I did wonder because you detailed the teams that went down 0-2 when they were, on the road. Have we had a champion who lost the first two at home? Do we know?
I forget what the 06 Heat did. I know they were another team that was down 0-2 when they came back to beat Dallas, but that's the only one that there haven't been that many that have come back from 0-2. It's only been a handful.
Yeah. Because when you said this was must win, I was going to give you a hard time and say it was hyperbole. And then as you laid it out, it was like, it's pretty important. So see what happens.
Sam, I'm fact-based here on the show. Always fact-based. I don't think it's ever happened. It didn't happen with Miami. I think they lost the first two on the road. And those other teams I mentioned lost on the road as well. So adjustment for San Antonio. What do you think is the biggest adjustment they're going to make going into game two?
Well, it's the same thing they've battled throughout the playoffs, which is that as great as Wemby is part of this is youth and it's him trying to figure out the chess match. He's inconsistent. He has a roller coaster, kind of element to his game. So they've got to, you already said this, they've got to get him inside more. Yes, it was super fun when he hit that 35-footer in the last round in game one. Okay, fine. But getting pushed out by Cat, getting pushed out by OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson. The problem is I just don't know how, doable that is because this is literally the roster construction that you should want to have to go at Wemby. And going into the series, I wrote a whole piece where I talked to some front office folks about the domino effect of what Victor was doing. And the reality is, and the irony is that like most of the people I talked to pointed to the Knicks roster construction as what you should want. A guy like Cat, who's 7 feet, 240 pounds. Mitch, big boy, a lot of heft. He can bully Wemby, and he's athletic enough to keep up with him. Same, OG and what he brings. So getting Victor going, first and foremost. Secondly, the others in the West Finals for the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox, Julian Champagnie, Dylan Harper, all the way down the line. Keldon Johnson had a fantastic finish to that series. Those guys have got to show up because, yes, Vic was 6-21 and struggled a bit, but the other guys weren't helping him either.
What did Keldon Johnson get? Like 8 minutes in that game one? That was surprising
to
me. I thought sixth man of the year. I thought he'd be a natural guy to put on Towns for stretches. That surprised me how little minutes he's got. Yeah, I thought
Yes.
that the fatigue, Sam, was a little bit overblown coming into the series because I thought 3 days was a long time, and thought being at home was going to be enough for San Antonio to recharge the batteries and not make fatigue as big an issue as some were. But I'm watching that game one. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Victor Wembanyama kind of grabbing his knees in the first quarter. I'm looking at some of these
Yeah.
other guys just not look like they had the same energy that they did early in that series in Oklahoma City. How big a factor do you think fatigue is going to be in this game too, and potentially the rest of the series?
It's significant, but I'm confused. Again, like I was not around Victor that much all season long. So now we've done this a long time. You get in the gym with these guys and you try to study them and learn how they're wired, how they operate. Victor and the way that he crashes out from a fatigue standpoint is puzzling because yes, I understand he's 7'4", but he's not lugging around 300 pounds. But he absolutely does have these moments, and you just hit on it like early in the game when he's clutching at the knees or looking for a blow that doesn't make sense. And that's where, as transcendent, great, and talented as he is, the inconsistency part is got to be tricky for Mitch Johnson, from a rotation standpoint, because, is that tied to not having as much of a break as the Knicks coming out of the West Finals? Like, that's a little hard to believe. Like you said, 3 days. So they got to fight through that. You didn't see any of that from the Knicks, and I don't really think that's necessarily because of that long stretch that they had to rest. But Wemby's great. Again, I keep kind of hitting the same point. He's great, but he comes and goes a bit.
How short a leash do you think De'Aaron Fox will be on tonight?
Very curious to see it because there are bigger picture implications of that kind of a choice. I've been asked this a couple times, and my thing is the Spurs, from a culture standpoint, are obviously incredibly savvy, and they know that the moment you open the door to the Dylan Harper era and you put De'Aaron, on the bench, because of the stakes of what's going on right now, like there's going to be a domino effect. And that's very tricky for them from a planning standpoint because, yes, they have this historical backdrop where Manu Ginobili famously agrees to go to the bench with Greg Popovich's, kind of nudging, and the rest is history. He's a Hall of Famer. Manu Ginobili was not making $60 million a year, which is what De'Aaron is on track to make. And so the solution is not quite as easy, even if De'Aaron at some point was willing to yield to the young fella in terms of a contract roster construction. That's an issue. So, but you got a championship on the line. So, would I be shocked to see it? I'd be surprised. I don't know how short the leash is. Dylan didn't show out, though. That's the other thing. He had a good first half, but 4 points in the second half. He faded a bit. But the more pressure that he applies with his play, and then with De'Aaron, if he keeps doing what he did in game one, which was having a hard time, then, we'll see what happens.
Talking to Sam Amick, senior NBA writer over at The Athletic in San Antonio for game 2 of the NBA Finals tonight. Sam, we are right around 3 weeks away from the NBA draft, which is 3 weeks away from the self-imposed deadline that the Milwaukee Bucks have to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. What have you been hearing over the last couple of days about Giannis, and how likely do you think it is that Giannis is traded before the June draft?
Seems very likely. Admittedly, that it's not often you have an owner, publicly framing the timeline, and that's what Jimmy Haslam did. We just saw Jimmy Haslam do a blockbuster trade with Myles Garrett in the NFL, showing he's certainly ready to pull that trigger if he needs to. I do expect it to happen. Miami, as you know, is the loudest noise. You continue to hear that. But what I tried to write the other day with my colleague Eric Name, and it was interesting to get into, is yes, it appears, everybody you talk to says Miami at the deadline had a deal that was close, had a deal that they thought was going to happen. The Bucks ended up backing out. And so the noise is tied to Miami, but there's also some intel discussion, kind of understanding that Giannis has questions about what that Miami roster would look like on the other side of a deal. It reminds me of the Carmelo Anthony dilemma when he went from Denver to the Knicks. Like, you don't want to gut the roster, go to the place that you're excited to be in, and then have a hard time contending for a championship. And that is where, we'll see what happens in these next few weeks, because in one of your backyards, I think the Celtics are a pretty intriguing option where, in terms of being competitive, if you do something with Boston, and this is what we had heard from Giannis's side, that the intrigue is real. The respect for Joe Mazzulla, the way that he might see that roster. So do I think it changes things? I don't know yet, but I do think that's worth watching.
I could see why Giannis would want to play in Boston. I still struggle to see why Boston would give up the kind of assets it would need to give up to go and get Giannis. Not that they aren't considering it, but if I'm running the Celtics, I'm not trading Jaylen Brown and a couple of draft picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo, not in a reaction to a bad first-round loss to the Philadelphia 76ers, mostly because I don't trust Giannis's health, Sam. I don't trust it. He's had multiple years of soft tissue injuries, and you're going to have to give this guy a multi-year contract at the full max. Now you're talking about having two full max guys on your roster in Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo, both of whom have dealt with significant injuries over the last couple of years. I know Jaylen Brown is not a perfect fit. I know the Celtics want to get more pressure on the rim. Brad Stevens talked about that. But to me, the risk is just too big to go all in on a player like Giannis at this stage.
Well, and it's very sensitive too. Like the Jaylen Brown thing that you just hit on. It's like when the noise got loud a couple months ago regarding Jaylen and how he saw the season and all the chatter about what he said on the live stream, that it was the most fun he'd ever had. And that was confusing because, it just sent this message that he wanted his own team. As you know, the Celtics, they went to great lengths to kind of massage that situation and get things back in a good place. And they're not the only team dealing with this. Like Miami is, and this is Giannis related, Miami is loud with it right now. They don't care if everybody knows that they're chasing Giannis because they don't really care what Tyler Hero feels about getting traded. But like Boston's got to be sensitive. The Knicks are unofficially out because of what they're doing. But you remember Karl Anthony Towns was not real thrilled to have his name attached to the Giannis discussion, previously. Like that is where I think we could see a wild card team come on strong, and come out of the shadows, so to speak, because I think there's a lot of teams that are absolutely looking at this and interested here, but also have to pay attention to their own locker room dynamics.
If somebody offered you $100,000 for your press pass for Game 3 in New York, would you take it?
I mean, journalistically, absolutely not. I would never consider such a thing.
I'd think about it. I'd think about it. If you're a Knicks fan,
I'm
out
a
there,
capital J journalist. If there's some, yeah. But the spirit of your question, like, I mean, yeah, 100K. I'm good with that. That's, the production value on TV these days is pretty high. I'll hang out with some buddies and watch this thing on a big old projector screen and laugh all the way to the bank.
And they transcribe all the quotes for you, Sam. It's all available on Media Central.
You trying to get me fired now? What are you doing?
$100,000. You got kids. No. I got a kid now. Yeah. It's like, you gotta look out for number one there. Sam, good stuff.
I am. Let me add on to this, Mannix. I'm fired up to go to New York, man. Like I'm a West Coaster, so I don't know if I would take that money because, like, I don't see the Garden very often. I don't see the chaos. I don't really know
the Sacramento guy in New York. There we go. This is what the Sacramento guy takes. By the way, to get your take quickly on a question that came up, more dysfunctional, more irrelevant right now, the Brooklyn Nets or the Sacramento Kings?
I mean, the Kings have things that they're trying to work on and to get out of the ditch. I don't know what Brooklyn's doing. So I actually probably go with Brooklyn.
They got young players in Brooklyn, though, Sam. Like, at least you've got, like, some hope. Like, Sacramento, who wants to be there right now? Like, who wants to be part of that team at the moment?
Listen, it is painful. I mean, as you know, you have Mike Brown, De'Aaron Fox in the finals. You have OG Anunoby, a guy that I've contend that they should have traded for to take the Beam team to the next level. There's all kinds of 6 degrees of Sacramento pain in this NBA Finals right now.
Yeah, you got to hate that. Sacramento watching their former head coach and their former star compete for a championship. One of them is going to win it at the end of the next couple of weeks. Great stuff, Sam. Good to catch up with you, and I will see you in New York City. Try to, keep it under control there. These late nights in New York, they don't close in New York City.
Yeah, we know about that. I met with you out there.
You got it.
All right, buddy.
Good stuff, Sam. Sam Amick, senior writer over at The Athletic, joining us here on the Dan Patrick Show.